Hey there, STEM Spark friends. So glad you're here. I'm Courtney, and welcome back to the STEM Spark, where we ignite curiosity, creativity, and confidence in every learner through science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math. All right, today I've got something super fun. We are doing our first episode of Real World STEM series. So, we are taking a ride into one of the most thrilling STEM topics out there, roller coasters. Okay, when you hop on a roller coaster, you're not just stepping into a ride, you're strapping into a lesson in science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So, buckle up because today we are going to explore how roller coasters work, the science that makes them do what they do, and so exciting. And then I'll share how you can design your own roller coaster at home or in the classroom, just using paper and recycled materials. Let's jump in. Okay, so first things first, it is important to understand the background of where things, the foundation of science, right? So roller coasters are powered by physics, and that is kind of a big word for younger students. But we can break that down into manageable bites, right? So the coolest part is a lot of roller coasters don't even have engines. Why is that? Because they use potential and kinetic energy. So, potential energy is energy that is stored, it's ready to use. So, when a roller coaster car climbs to the top of the hill, it has potential energy because if it goes down, that is kinetic energy, right? So at the top, that's potential. It's there. It's going to be used, but it's not being used yet. Kinetic energy is the energy of motion. So when it starts rolling down, when it kind of drops down the track, that is when it's using kinetic energy. It's moving. Now, what is causing it to move? If you said gravity, you are right. So, of course, there's gravity. It is pulling the cars down. Inertia is the force that keeps them moving along the track, right? So, you don't need any engine or anything for inertia. Inertia is just moving, keeping moving, momentum, right? Now, how do we stop? Friction is going to play a part. So when you add in friction between the wheels and the rails, and you also add in air resistance or drag, um, that slows things down. So it sounds like the perfect recipe for lots of thrills, right? So it is amazing. You can pull in all of those different words or just a few. I would say as you're doing the unit, the more you can use those specific words, I would do it. The more exposure they have to those words, the more they're going to start intrinsically using them and understanding more and more of what they mean, right? So I would use them as much as possible, even if you have to explain it um, every time, right? And then you can just hone in on the ones you really want them to fine tune or understand or know for like a test or whatever. For younger kids, you can break it down even further. You can simplify it into force and motion. The force being a push or pull on an object. So is it being pushed up the track or is it being pulled down by gravity? Gravity is another simple one that you can kind of pull in. And then motion is simply the change in the object's position over time. So if it's changing position over a set amount of time, then that is motion. All right, so you can kind of break it down into that. For all kids, you can incorporate Newton's laws of motion. So there are so many fun activities and lessons that you can do to learn those laws. They are so great, and a quick um, Google search will give you a plethora of options and ideas. For the older forces. Oh, they are forces, right? For the older kids, you can even talk about G forces. So that is the push you back into your seat kind of feeling when you go around a curve or a big hill. So that is acceleration at work. So you can do a lot of different things. You can even pull in speed and things like that. And so there's lots and lots of science that you can do with this project, which is so great. And what kid doesn't like roller coasters? So it is super fun, highly engaging. It has that creativity component because when they make it, they get to kind of design it themselves. And then it does have that engineering component because they are like testing it. Does it work? Does it move down? Does it get stuck? What do I need to do to fix that? Those types of things. Okay, so now that we understand the science about it a little bit more, we're going to jump into some research and history options. One thing I really love to do with this unit is allow students to learn about the history of how roller coasters started and then how science, technology, engineering, and math have drastically improved roller coasters in recent years. And it really hasn't been that long. And so I will generally do a timeline activity where I give them pictures of roller coasters throughout the years. We start with the very first one, and then it is helpful if you print the pictures in color if you can, because then they can kind of see the detail a little bit better. But I print the pictures and then just have them put them in order. Which one is the oldest? Which one is the newest? And they can do this with relatively little assistance, just based on the picture clues. And so it's super fun. Even my middle schoolers were highly engaged with this activity. Um, so as long as they are able to interpret picture clues and kind of relate that to things that they've seen, done, experienced, then that activity is super fun. Another way to make it a little more challenging, so if you have an advanced kid or if you have older students, you can include a year or the name and description of the roller coaster. And so you could do this several different ways. You could have it all on one paper and they just organize it in the actual timeline. So maybe if you're doing this with really younger kids, they are just trying to order the numbers, right? And then another way to kind of bump that up is separate the picture from the year and the description. And so now they're trying to, I would say, put your pictures in order and then try to match your descriptions and see if that kind of works. And then you can kind of finagle from there. You could also cut it into 3 parts. So I would do picture, year separate, and then the name and description separate as well. So that would be 3 layers of putting them in order and different things. So I have had lots of engagement with that. And they really enjoy kind of the challenge of getting them right. And so that's super fun. Another way that you can kind of increase student engagement is to have them research roller coasters around the world. So every country has, well, not every country, maybe I should change that. A lot of countries have roller coasters, and some of them have really amazing ones. And so you can always give them certain things to find. So, like if your student is really kind of struggling on what they would want to see or want to research, you can kind of fine tune it into what is the longest roller coaster in the world? What's the fastest? Which one has the most loops? Which one is the most popular? Which one is the tallest, the shortest, etc. And so you could even go into factors of what you're learning in the science part of it. So, which one uses the least outside force? Which one uses the most? That kind of thing. Which one has the highest speed? And so, or even with your older kids, they could start looking into G forces. And so, those are kind of fun if they don't really have a direction they want to go. And so that could be fun. Also, you could have them generate a list of roller coaster types that they're interested in, and then have them find one to match up in different continents or countries. You could do a compare and contrast based on the science concepts you're learning. So, we're going to compare one in America to one in Asia. So, there's so much you could do. You can leave it open ended and just say, I want you to find three different roller coasters around the world that you like and tell me why. And so, or would you ride it? That was a question I posed to my middle schoolers when they did it was an open ended activity. They just had to research roller coasters around the world, and then they had to pick one to present to the class. And at the end of when they presented, I asked the class, okay, on a scale of, I think, 1 to 5, would you ride this? And so they just held up their fingers for the number. And it was really interesting to see how many were a little more leery than others. There might have been one or two that was like, I would ride every single one, but it really wasn't quite that way. And so it was very interesting to kind of get their feedback on that. The possibilities can truly be tailored to the needs of your students. And even in a class, they can vary slightly. So some students who are great with, I can think of my own question and do my own research, let them run. For those kids that are struggling and they're just like not doing anything, it's like, okay, help them come up with a question or pose a couple of options that they can maybe choose from. So it is very um, able to be tailored to your environment and to your students. So I do love that component, and I hope that if you do roller coasters, you have at least a little bit of time to incorporate something like that. All right, so now we are to the project part. Build your own roller coaster. So I typically want them to work in groups. I would say um, 3 is probably my magic number right now for this kind of activity. I have done 4, and that just seems to be a little too many. There tends to be at least one person kind of sitting around not doing anything. So I would say 3 to 4 is probably, depending on your age bracket, the best kind of option for this. You can always do more. You can always do less if you have some really advanced kids. Maybe having, if they want to work by themselves or with a partner, it may slow them down just a smidge because there's less people to do the work. And so that may kind of keep them, especially if they're kind of quick to finish, keep them on time with the rest of the class. But I would probably stick to that 3 to 4 mark. All right. So, for younger kids, for like kindergarten to second grade, I would start simple. We use paper tubes. These are the ones that our custodial staff saves. So I have to pull these out, and they're pretty tight. These are also very thick, which is great because they do add quite a bit of stability. And a lot of my older kids, when they were doing this, they actually just use these for supports instead of the tubing. Um, but the regular paper towel rolls and the regular toilet paper rolls are super easy to cut and use. If you have the thicker ones, a pro tip that I found that works really great is if you have a pair of PVC cutters. I know not everybody has one, but I do for my class. And so I actually use those on this, and it cuts really easily. You can cut it all the way across, or you can just kind of cut it down a little bit at a time. But those actually work really, really great. You could even cut it and tape it to the wall. So for grades 3 through 5, I would add in curves, twists, funnels. You can use construction paper, you can use tape, cardboard, even. I have seen where people, and I've actually done it, it's not my favorite, but you can get the either pool noodles, or you can go to the hardware store and get um, the tubing insulator foam kind of stuff and cut that in half. It's not super expensive. Well, it wasn't several years ago when I bought it. But I two things. The marble didn't stay in super well, so maybe I just didn't get the right size. But also, it was very messy to cut, and so it wasn't straight. It just kind of bothered me, honestly. So it wasn't my favorite, but the lesson did go okay, and they got the understanding. I will say that there is a um, website online that gives you free paper roller coaster printables. It is called sciencebuddies.org, and you can use funnels. So it tells you exactly how to cut it out and how to use it. There's also ones that you can use for supports. And again, it just tells you exactly what to do. Cut it on the solid lines, fold it on the dotted lines, and it has everything. And then we have hill and loops. So you cut these and then it's bendable. So you could do a hill or you could do a loop. And then it also gives you the curves. I wouldn't use curves unless you have some really advanced kids, until probably middle school, because that was even challenging for my middle schoolers. They loved the funnels and they really loved the hill and loop ones. They used these two the most. And then for supports, they didn't use the paper. They used things like this is just a skewer, like a wooden skewer. They used craft sticks of different sizes, and then they also used the tubes. You could also like just save, your recyclables, and you can use that. You could even use these as tubes if you wanted to. But I save like packing materials and all kinds of stuff like that, so that when we do projects like this, we have some options. And so some kids may want this to be their tower, and that's their stairs to climb up to get into the roller coaster, or maybe it's an elevator if they're super fancy or whatever. And so I think just having some different options kids really like. So that is the paper roller coaster things that I use. For grades 6 through 8, I would say adding loops, bank turns, or those curve pieces. I would encourage those older students to test different track angles and measure how the speed changes depending on the height of the first hill. My kids were naturally doing that because they have that science background. They would put it at one point and it would get stuck somewhere along the round. And so they would say, oh, we got to go back to our start hill and make it higher. And so they were naturally kind of doing those things, but maybe encouraging them to think about that if they're not naturally doing it. I would even say, like, if you have access to devices, slow-mo videoing so they can really see what the marble is doing, or whatever car structure you're using is doing, is a really great way to incorporate some technology and to give them like a slowed down view of what's happening. And so things like that can go a long way for problem solving. And then the best part, all these recycled materials are free. Well, they're not free, but you know what I mean. So have your friends and family, your coworkers, your students bring in cereal boxes and grab your tape, your scissors, your paper, and your marble, and you are ready to go. I will tell you that when I bought my marbles, probably last year when I did this, I just went to Dollar Tree and it was like a bag. They were actually in the floral section. They're like decor for vases. Um, and I think there was like probably 50 in the bag for $1.25. So that's where I got my marbles, and they were very inexpensive. So let's talk about the STEAM experience and how we can incorporate these specific things. Um, Science, obviously, we've talked about the different concepts you can hit. We can talk about how to change the height of your first hill and how that might change the speed. Record your data and compare. Speed is a relatively simple math formula. So you just take the distance traveled, so there's a measurement opportunity, and then divide it by the time it took to travel that distance. And so if the distance is 36 inches and it took 30 seconds, you would do 36 divided by 30. And then your speed would be seconds per inch. So that would be your speed rate. And so that's a great, and it's a fun thing. Kids want to know the speed, and so they're willing to do the math to figure it out. And so that is a really great technique to use. And then for technology, like I said earlier, you could slow-mo video. You could also, there's like free roller coaster simulation apps. You could use those to kind of plan out or try different designs before they build. There are so many techie things related to roller coasters. A simple Google search will get you whatever you need. And so technology is abounding in this area. For engineering, redesign, problem solve, right? So when the marble gets stuck, students do some problem solving and adjust the design, just like real engineers would do. If you have some budget, you could get a Kinex kit even and build a roller coaster that has the motor and everything. And then they could learn kind of the science and the physics from that. Is always fun. For art, I love letting them decorate. One of my groups finished early and they actually built a really great roller coaster. So I wasn't like, no, you've got more time, go like add to it. And they wanted to use, I have button batteries and LED lights. And so they wanted to create a circuit, and I have the copper tape to make a paper circuit. And so they made a circuit on their roller coaster that had lights going down and around. And so it was really cool. I was very proud of them for kind of wanting to do that extension. So that's awesome. You could even have them pick a theme and decorate it based on a theme. You could, if you're in a classroom where multiple groups are making a roller coaster, you could even have them discuss, do we want to make an amusement park and all be the same thing? Do we want different areas of the park? And these two groups are this area and these two groups are that area. And so just kind of thinking through those types of things could be fun. You could also even make like, could we make one whole class roller coaster? I don't know if that would work, but maybe it would, depending on how you started in different things. So things like that could bring in a lot of fun, creativity, and that edge of challenge, right? And then for math, measure the length of your track, measure the height of your first hill, calculate the slope if you have kids that are doing those types of math things. Older students can graph speed versus time or compare designs. Younger kids, have them graph just the success of their trial. Did it make it through? Yes or no? And they just tally either one. Upper elementary could definitely measure and calculate speed of their different runs, and so things like that are a great way to incorporate that little math bit. Sneaking it in there, right? All right, so a few extensions that you could do for K2, sort the tracks by tallest. Which one has the longest run? Which one is the fastest? Those types of things. Practice vocabulary like gravity, hill, speed, those types of words and vocabulary, throwing it in. For 3 to 5, create a mini coaster park and have each group design one ride and then kind of put them together and display it as that amusement park kind of feel. Maybe having them even add in like little booths for souvenirs or snacks or a restaurant or different things, right? Thinking about those types of things. For 6-8, challenge the students to design the most efficient roller coaster, the longest ride with the least materials. You can even incorporate a budget into that where they have to buy Their supports or different things cost certain money. Or they could research famous roller coasters and compare stats of those, like the tallest drop or the fastest speed. All right. What are the big takeaways? Roller coasters aren't just about thrills, right? They're an amazing way to see science, engineering, technology, math in action. Whether you're a kindergartner or a middle school student, building one with just paper and tape really shows us how creativity and problem solving drive the world of STEM. So next time you ride on a roller coaster, you can tell your friends you're just studying physics in action. I would call it professional development. You may call it whatever you'd like. If you give the roller coaster, the create your own roller coaster a try, I'd love to see your creations. Share them with me. You can comment or email me, and I would love to see that. All right, STEM Spark listeners, I'll leave you with this final question. What kind of roller coaster will you dream of? Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to follow the show, leave a review if you're loving it, and share it with a fellow educator, parent, or STEM enthusiast. I'll be back next week with more ideas to keep your STEM rolling in the right direction. This is Courtney, and you've been listening to the STEM Spark, where curiosity sparks creativity. Bye.